take everything that exists. They want to get rid of everything except the Bernie Sanders healthcare plan. And he tried to explain to people who weren't paying attention what the Democrats' position is right now. Well, that was amazing, because what that did was it really put everything out there. It put the Democrats squarely in the middle of not being able to hide the facts of what the Bernie Sanders plan is and what the House of Representatives similar plan is. And it is a socialized health care plan, a government takeover of health care. And the leadership of the Democratic Party wasted absolutely no time in coming out and saying how misleading the president was, what a liar he was, how he was scaring the American public. Nancy Pelosi had a piece that came out saying that the president is falsely attacking this plan and that Republicans are for special interests and that the Democrats are for the people, that they love the people, that they want to lower health care plan costs, they want to lower prescription drug costs, and they want to do this through a strong economy, rebuilding America, and ending corruption in Washington. This is like a fairy tale. It's unbelievable what these people will say and how they will lie directly to the American people. So stay with us. I want to unwrap the single-payer issue that Donald Trump has unleashed when we get back. So stay with us.
The Docs for Patient Care Foundation is your way to join the fight and become a member of an organization created by doctors for patients dedicated to fighting for your healthcare freedom and preserving the doctor-patient relationship. Get a pen and paper. Write down www.docsforpatientcarefoundation.org. That's www.docsforpatientcarefoundation.org. Go to our site and please make a generous tax-deductible donation and join the fight today. Thank you.
Whether cruising the strip in a 57 Chevy or taking the family on a vacation in a 71 Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser, you need to tune in to Classic Cars with Steve Ronaldo and Jim Weber every Saturday from 8 to 9 a.m. on americaswebradio.com.
The Docs for Patient Care Foundation is your way to join the fight and become a member of an organization created by doctors for patients dedicated to fighting for your healthcare freedom and preserving the doctor-patient relationship. Get a pen and paper. Write down docs4patientcarefoundation.org. That's DOCS, the number 4, patientcarefoundation.org. Go to our site and please make a generous tax-deductible donation and join the fight today. Thank you.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Welcome back into the Doctor's Lounge. I'm your host, Dr. Hal. We are talking today about single payer and President Trump weighing in and stirring the pot as far as this is concerned. Just to restate single payer and Bernie Care. Bernie Care wants to gut health care and give everyone the ability to get anything that they want, anytime that they want, from anyone that they want. It's a fairy tale plan, and it does not work. Socialized health care doesn't work anywhere in the world, and just when the rest of the world is abandoning socialized health care because of all the problems that they're finding, the left in this country wants to jump in and change the American health care plan into a socialized health care plan. And it spells disaster if the Democrats win and take control, because this is on their agenda. So if you think that Obamacare was bad, you ain't seen nothing yet, because this is going to absolutely destroy American health care. So this plan is called Medicare for All, which is really dishonest. It's not Medicare for All at all. But the interesting thing that they are not telling anybody is the price tag and how we pay for this. This is going to cost $32.5 trillion over the 10 years that it is, first 10 years that it's implemented. Now, if we know anything about the history of estimating costs in healthcare, we know that they are wrong 100% of the time, and the costs are always an underestimate. When Medicare was created back in 1964 and implemented in 1965, it cost $2 billion. It was estimated that by 1990, 15 years later, the cost of Medicare would be about $12 billion a year. In fact, it turned out to be $107 billion a year. Today, that cost is north of $580 billion a year. So these costs for the Bernie Sanders socialized healthcare takeover is going to cost us at the minimum $32 trillion over 10 years. So how would this be paid for? Well, I will tell you what they want to do. They want to redirect finances to this new program. And the program would be funded from existing sources of government revenues for health care, which means the money that's allocated for Medicare, for Medicaid. I don't know about veterans care. Veterans care is a little nebulous, but the Children's Health Care Insurance Plan, or CHIP, would be money that would be rolled into this. It would be funded by increasing personal income taxes on the top 5% of income earners. What that ceiling would be is not predictable. Nobody has said. But I read that if you took every millionaire in this country and confiscated 100% of their income, that it would pay for less than 1 year of this health care plan. So the taxes are going to need to go up. Elizabeth Warren who's a sponsor of the Bernie bill, said that 90% taxes may be a little too much. 50% is probably the minimum. So it's going to be somewhere, in her opinion, between 50 and 90%. And that's where the Democrats will push for if they get control of Congress and the White House. This program would be funded by instituting a progressive excise tax on payroll and self-employment income. It would be paid for by instituting a tax on unearned income, like stock transactions or rental income. It would be paid for by instituting a tax on bond and stock transactions. It would, and there are an array of other taxes that were discussed that would need to be either implemented or increased to pay for this, and it would cover illegal immigrants, and that is not that is something that the Democrats are not telling you, but that is clearly a part of this plan. And Senator Schumer, who jumped on the bandwagon to rip Trump for lying about exposing this Bernie bill is saying that Trump is smearing and sabotaging the efforts to fix health care by issuing false and misleading words that can't cover up the truth, that in fact it's not them, the Democrats, who have hurt health care, but it's Trump and the Republicans. And I just am absolutely just amazed. It takes my breath away that the Democrats, everything that they do or everything that they say is transferred to the Republicans. It's a common mechanism that you learn about in Psychology 101 called transference, where you transfer or ascribe what you're doing to your adversary or your opponent. You know, I think I'm going to be putting together a reading list because I want people to read some things that actually I need to reread just so that I can be up on this. But these visions of the left, which have taken over the Democrat Party, there is no more Democrat Party. It's the Republicans against the left. And this is an existential fight for the heart and the soul of our country. And if you are a freedom-loving individual, then you cannot look at what the left wants to do and be on board with this. It is just absolutely, it's out of step with what most people truly believe, what most good people believe. And if you read Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, that's part of my reading list for you to see what he tells people to do to stir up trouble and to make change. And the Democrats have adopted this, and they are doing this over and over. But my reading list would also include books like 1984, which you need to read if you have not read that. I've read that years ago. I plan to reread this book, as do I plan to reread Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. And I've read this book twice, but I'm going to read it again just so that I can cement in my mind what is really going on, which is Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. And for the people that this needs to reach, unfortunately, are not going to read these books because they don't have pictures in them. But this is absolutely mandatory reading to understand what's going on. And another book which I would recommend, even though I'm not happy with his activities over the last 2 years as a never Trumper, is Jonah Goldberg's book, which is Liberal Fascism, which is a very well written book, a very important book, but it really describes these tactics that Schumer, that Pelosi, that the left are implementing to try to counter the truth that is being told to the public by Trump about single-payer health care, and then by the people who are amplifying his message. And I'm going to get into that in just a second. But I think that it is it's important that the people who are amplifying Trump's message about health care need to do a better job. And we're trying to do that. We do that here on the radio show. We're doing it in print. But the public needs to learn the truth about what this socialized overhaul, this takeover of healthcare really will mean to them. And the Washington Post, in response to President Trump coming on board against socialized single-payer health care felt compelled as a public service to use their fact checkers to rip apart what he wrote about, and they got it wrong. Their fact checkers are basically so biased and so invested in propping up the Democrat position about single payer that they are not being honest themselves, which led me to write a piece in Town Hall yesterday. So I'm going to plug my piece. Please go to Town Hall and read my piece, which is entitled "President Trump Gets Blasted by Washington Post Fact Checkers, but Who Checks Their Facts?" And I think that that's really important because their facts are based, they're rooted in the orthodoxy, in the thought process of the left, and they are there are basically two realities right now that we are living in. We're living in parallel universes where you have the facts from the left, which are not really facts, and then you've got the facts from the right, which the left would contend are not really facts either. But I love that I started my piece with the quote from Senator Patrick Moynihan: "Everyone's entitled to his own opinion, but not his own facts." I love that. So stay with us. I'm going to wrap this up in the last segment, and you're in the Doctor's Lounge.
The Docs for Patient Care Foundation is your way to join the fight and become a member of an organization created by doctors for patients, dedicated to fighting for your healthcare freedom and preserving the doctor-patient relationship. Get a pen and paper. Write down docs4patientcarefoundation.org. That's DOCS, the number 4, patientcarefoundation.org. Go to our site and please make a generous tax-deductible donation and join the fight today. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mike Karuchak. Join me and my co-host, Dr. Hal Scherz, as we talk about the topics that doctors talk about amongst themselves, such as Medicare, Obamacare, alternative forms of care, and health information technology. Join us every Thursday morning, 8 to 9 a.m.
The Docs for Patient Care Foundation is your way to join the fight and become a member of an organization created by doctors for patients, dedicated to fighting for your healthcare freedom and preserving the doctor-patient relationship. Get a pen and paper. Write down www.docs4patientcarefoundation.org. That's www.docs4patientcarefoundation.org. Go to our site and please make a generous tax-deductible donation and join the fight today. Thank you.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
We're back in the Doctor's Lounge. I want to thank everybody who listens to this show regularly. I've been told that our downloads are at a record pace, and I hope to be able to share a number with you the next time, because I think that you are the reason why we're doing so well. I think that the things that we're trying to share with you are important. I think we're doing an important service by doing this show. But your support, you're telling your friends about this, you're sharing the links, the podcasts, that's really important, because what we do is not going to be effective if it's not shared with people and the message isn't getting out there. So I really want to thank everybody who downloads this show and shares the links with their friends, with their social media, and I would encourage you to continue to do that and make sure that they are regular listeners to the Doctor's Lounge. So my email is drdr.hal@americaswebradio.com, and I would love to hear from you if for suggestions and for for other topics and just whether or not we're doing a good job or not. So please go to dr.hal@americaswebradio.com. So I wrote a piece about the fact checkers and some things that I said in this piece that I think that needs to be said is that socialized healthcare is becoming the mainstream position of the Democrats. They don't want you to know that, but it is. The Bernie bill has 16 sponsors, including 4 of the leading candidates for president in 2020 right now, Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker. These are the people who are sponsoring that Bernie bill. In the House, there's 123 sponsors of the similar bill, including the current vice chairman of the Democrat National Committee, Keith Ellison, the spouse abuser who the left conveniently is not believing the word of the person he abused. It's the double standard is glaring, but nonetheless, getting back to health care, he is the chair of the vice chair of the Democrat National Committee. He is the lead sponsor of the House bill for socialized health care. So if you think for a second that it's not going to be part of the Democrat platform in 2020, you're smoking something. Maybe you live in Canada now where it's legal. And so, but this is part of the Democrat position. And the fact checkers blast President Trump at saying that that this is going to hurt seniors and it's going to keep them from getting the benefits that they are used to. But we know that the government lies. Or not the government, well, yes, the government lies, but we know that the Democrats lie. The Democrats lie on a regular basis, and they lie because they are trying to pull the wool over the eyes of the Americans. This happened with Obamacare when Obama blatantly and just shamelessly stood in front of the Americans 23 times and said, if you like your plan, you can keep it. If you like your doctor, you can keep him. That we will cut your premiums by $2,500 when they've actually now more than doubled between 2013 and 2017 when Obamacare was at its peak. So they lie because they think that nobody's paying attention. And you know what? They're right. Nobody is paying attention. It's time for people to pay attention. How do you pay attention? How do you know what socialized healthcare is going to mean to Americans? Just look at places where it's right now being implemented, where countries that have socialized healthcare. Great Britain is the greatest example of how wrong socialized healthcare has been and how bad it has become. There are over 5 million Brits who are on a waiting list called on the National Health Service waiting for an operation. And these operations are the kind of operations that seniors expect to get, like joint replacement, cataract surgery, heart surgery, etc. But it gets worse than that, and this is what the Democrats won't tell you about socialized health care. The way that the National Health Service in Great Britain is able to continue to offer health care to people is to ration care. You heard about death panels during the Obamacare debates, and the Democrats would malign the people who talked about death panels, which really do exist. Death panels aren't people who say you die. They're people who say that your treatment is too expensive and we're not going to pay for it. That's what we see on a regular basis in Great Britain. And if you think that I'm not telling you the truth, if you think that this is not correct, do your own fact checking, because this exists, and it's called the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, or the ironic euphemism NICE. What NICE does, it's a rationing board in Great Britain that uses a tool called Quality Adjusted Life Years, QALYs. And they determine if they're going to pay for a certain treatment based on whether or not the treatment will extend the life or the quality of life of an individual, and if the cost is below a certain threshold per year of life, then the treatment will be approved. So what does that mean? Okay, what it means is, let's pretend that somebody's got cancer, and that the treatment, the surgery and the chemotherapy for the treatment is going to cost, let's just say, $250,000. Well, let's say that the actuarial tables for a patient with that kind of cancer is 3 years. And they put a price on what a life year would cost. So they're saying that they're not going to spend more than £25,000, which is about $30,000 a year in cost for this particular disease. So this patient actuarially has a 3-year life expectancy. The treatment is going to cost $250,000, but the threshold is $30,000 a year, or $100,000 for the 3 years that they expect this patient to live. The cost exceeds the cost for the life expectancy. They deny the treatment. That's the rationing board in Great Britain. That's how they pay for healthcare in Great Britain. They ration it. And that's what's going to happen in this country. That's how they treat seniors in Great Britain, and that's how they're going to treat seniors in this country. What seniors are used to, which is getting Medicare or paying into the more popular and better Medicare Advantage, which now a third of the Medicare recipients are participating in, that would disappear. It will not exist. It will go away. And the people in Great Britain, the seniors who need a hip replacement or a knee replacement, are instead given pain medication or a cane, and they're told, make do. That's what's going to happen here. That is not what we want here. But that's what the Democrats won't tell you. And the fact checkers from the Washington Post become a little bit obsessed that we can't do it, but the other countries can. But we are 5 times the size of Great Britain, 10 times the size of Canada, where they also have socialized health care. And our population is far more heterogeneous, more diversified, more diverse. And so the problems are greater and they're more difficult. And so it is impossible to implement a one-size-fits-all solution in the United States when they can't even do it in a place where it's smaller and more homogeneous, easier to do this. So this is a big problem for us if we go down this road. You need to be paying attention on Election Day in 3 weeks, because this is what the Democrats want to do. This is what they are running on. They're trying to tell people that this is a good idea because Republicans are destroying health care. They are not. The Trump administration is the only administration in the last couple that have actually tried to deregulate healthcare, that have the intention of continuing to deregulate healthcare. It will continue if he has a cooperative Congress. It will come to a screeching halt if there is a split government. And if you give the Democrats the keys to control, things are going to get very, very bad for Americans with regard to their health care. And as President Trump has so aptly put it, why would you give an arsonist a match? And that's exactly what giving the Democrats control of any branch of government at this point in time, when they are overrun by the left, is going to do. And we have to be smarter, and we have to educate the people who don't know about this, what a Democrat Congress, what a Democrat Senate, what a Democrat White House would look like with regard to health care, because it ain't too pretty. And a lot of people who are on this bandwagon now writing about single payer. Betsy McCoy is writing about it now. David Bossie is writing about it. The Republican National Committee is writing about this, and it's really time for people to pay attention, because there's only one party that is trying to fix health care, while the other party is trying to take it over. And taking it over and letting the government run it is a huge mistake. They failed to do it when they had an opportunity to run a socialized system in the VA, and the Trump administration is trying to fix that right now. So pay attention in 3 weeks, and we are at a hard break. We're at the end of the show, so thanks for being with us, and cast your vote appropriately.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Get your pen and paper ready. If there's a move in your near future, I'm here to tell you that the folks I used and now recommend is Around Town Movers. Timothy and the guys recently moved me, and I am and was totally satisfied with a sometimes not so fun experience moving. Call Timothy at 770-378-4708 and make it a good move and a good experience. Around Town Movers for that local or cross-country move. Timothy, Around Town Movers, in my opinion, are the best. That's Around Town Movers. Call them.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Healingcenter.com.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening.
Get your pen and paper ready. If there's a move in your near future, I'm here to tell you that the folks I used and now recommend is Around Town Movers. Timothy and the guys recently moved me, and I am and was totally satisfied with a sometimes not so fun experience moving. Call Timothy at 770-378-4708 and make it a good move and a good experience. Around Town Movers for that local or cross-country move. Timothy, Around Town Movers, in my opinion, are the best. That's Around Town Movers. Call them.
Perhaps you are struggling to cope with the disease of addiction. If not, you probably know a family member or friend that needs help in battling the cravings and the personal and professional damage done by the effects of drugs or alcohol. Get a pen and paper and be ready to write down the following. These are the issues that the trained staff at the Atlanta Healing Center address and treat every day. Their doctors and counselors with over 40 years of practice in the field of addiction can treat the suffering individual in a thoughtful, compassionate, and experienced manner and guide him or her along the path to recovery. So call 770-696-9862 and speak to a knowledgeable staff member about how you or your loved one can be helped to enjoy a better and healthier life. More information is also available on the website at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mike Karuchak. Join me and my co-host, Dr. Hal Scherz, as we talk about the topics that doctors talk about amongst themselves, such as Medicare, Obamacare, alternative forms of care, and health information technology. Join us every Thursday morning, 8 to 9 a.m.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
They're actually con artists because they know how quality this man is, and they've destroyed a man's reputation, and they want to destroy it even more. And I think people are going to see that in the midterms.
There you hear, of course, if you don't know already, the words of our President Donald Trump talking about the Supreme Court nomination process. Now, what does that have to do with healthcare policy? This is the Doctor's Lounge radio show. I'm your host, Dr. Mike Karuchak, for this week. Thanks so much for spending some time with us. What does the Supreme Court nomination process, as familiar as we are with it these days, have to do with healthcare policy, which is the mandate of this show? Well, it turns out that our Washington politicians, with all of their malicious talent, both Democrat and Republican, have managed to figure out a way to hurt the healthcare reform process by using the Supreme Court nomination process to suck up all the oxygen in the room. With me is Dr. Lee Gross. You've heard him on the show before. I'm delighted to have him. He's the president of our Docs for Patient Care Foundation, and he's going to catch us up with all of his adventures and misadventures in Washington that actually manages somehow to connect the dots between the Supreme Court and healthcare policy. So, Dr. Lee, the floor is yours. Tell us what you know.
Thanks, Mike. Great chatting with you again. It's been a little while, so appreciate you letting me catch up. Yeah, so I guess we've coined a new phrase that I was cabined today.
Perfect.
Yeah. So, as many of your audience may know, I was scheduled to testify in this, actually today, in the Senate Health Committee. That's the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee of the U.S. Senate. And they were holding a series of hearings on healthcare, reducing healthcare costs, which is fantastic because up until now, the only conversations in Washington were about coverage. So this is actually one of the first series of conversations about how do you actually reduce the cost of healthcare, what drives the increased cost and what lowers it. So I was thrilled to get that invitation to testify. And I know you're a technology guy, so you'll appreciate this. Thank goodness for my Apple Watch, because I made it all the way to my my airport 2 hours away today. I put all my stuff into the bin, including my phone, and I was about to run it through the airport scanner when my Apple Watch started vibrating and I was getting a phone call. And so I grabbed my phone out of the bin. It turns out it was Washington calling to cancel the hearing because of the mayhem and madness that was surrounding this Supreme Court hearing. They were concerned for safety. They were concerned that nobody was going to be able to attend, and basically just sort of indefinitely postponed it. Not sure when we're going to get that scheduled again. But
well, that is so sad. That is so depressing. What did they get specific about the safety concerns? I don't really. I guess I'm just not smart enough to fully grasp that. I mean, the demonstrators?
The demonstrators. I guess the safety concern really kind of came into conversation afterwards. I was talking to one of the staffers, unrelated specifically to the health committee. So there were some major protests going on at the Capitol, and they expressed their own personal safety concerns. And these are Hill staffers. Just things are getting pretty raucous up there. And just really, I just didn't think, they just wanted it. It's not an ideal setting to be holding a bipartisan hearing on healthcare policy when you could put it off to a more, a date down the line where you can actually have a real conversation about this stuff. So it's unfortunate because, lots of preparation went into this.
So tell us what it takes. I mean, this is not just that you just book a plane, cancel your clinic for the day, and head up there and have a chat. There's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, so the instructions were relatively benign, basically saying submit a written testimony as short or as long as you wish, followed by a one-page summary, and be prepared to give a 5-minute summary orally of your testimony, and then be prepared for 5 minutes of questioning by each of the 22 members of the Senate Health Committee. And so I proceeded to prepare about 15 pages of written testimony and tried to come up with a way to explain everything about direct primary care in 5 minutes and make a splash for everyone. And then, essentially what you're doing is you're preparing for questions from a panel of people, many of whom intend to be running for president, many whom are trying to make a statement on healthcare policy, and essentially you're preparing for what the Republicans probably want to be the closing argument on healthcare prior to midterms, and the Democrats basically saying, using this as an example to say why Republicans should no longer control the conversation on healthcare policy. So, to prepare for this requires a lot of preparation, preparation understanding the content, preparation, just understanding what questions you're going to be asked and how not to sort of, walk into a trap. And also, even just getting to the point where you're invited, you have to go through a series of interviews. Initially, just an interview for the person that sort of found you, and then you have to go through a Republican interview, and then you have to go through the Democrat interview. And if everybody feels like you're an acceptable witness, then the formal invitation comes, and that's when the real preparation starts. So this process played out, over the course of probably 2 months to prepare for this one hearing.
Well, and countless hours of prep. I mean, it was more than just writing your testimony, I'm sure. You had to prepare for all possible questions, prepare your 5-minute summary. I mean, it's not one of these things that you can ad-lib very much, I imagine.
Yeah, well, I like to wing it sometimes, so...
You're a brave man.
Yeah, I'm not afraid to shoot from the hip because, you never know what the opening statements are going to be like and whether or not you're going to have to sort of to audible and respond to some comments. But nonetheless, I, of course, was well prepared for this, and so I hope they do reschedule this sometime in the not too distant future, so we can.
It's a shame
have a chance
because I didn't have a chance to quote chapter and verse on this, but an article I read recently said that healthcare policy was the only topic out of a long list of topics that a majority of American voters in the survey said was important to the midterms. It came up as number one. Healthcare did. So it's sad. I mean, the odds of seeing this before the midterms is probably zero. I wish I felt good about your prospects of getting rescheduled at all. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't have high expectations, but I want to point out one thing, just very clear, because we're about to have a referendum on basically single-payer health care. We can call it Medicare for all, although I think that term is disingenuous because they're not proposing a Medicare for all type situation. So I don't concede that term. But what I would throw out very simply is if you want your health care controlled by the people that are running the Supreme Court nomination process and confirmation process, then that is single-payer health care. Those are the same people that will be making your health care decisions for you. The same people that are running the circus up there are the people that will decide what gets paid for, what doesn't get paid for, and how much money is allocated to it, and who gets hired and who gets fired to make those decisions and runs that entire system for you. So if you want that to be your only choice in healthcare, you're single payer in healthcare, then you should.
Then you deserve what you get.
You deserve what you get because this will play out in every living room across the country. In your healthcare decisions, and don't just think this is a Republican thing. I mean, this pendulum will continue to swing back and forth, and it may be the Republicans in power now, but it's going to be the Democrats in power whether it be midterms or eventually it's going to happen. And so there will be a constant fight over healthcare along the lines of what we're seeing in Washington right now. So you may be on the winning side of it this time, you'll be on the losing side of it next time, and as a nation, we'll all be on the losing side of it.
Clearly these folks, Lee, place no value on human life, whether it's the single life of a Supreme Court justice nominee and his spouse and his children and his family and friends. They clearly place political advantage over the life of one person. They will not hesitate at all to put their own advantage and their own power over the health of every American. There's no question about it. So if you want a clear example of both competence and intent, just look at what's happening. There's no question about it.
And I think that needs to be a bipartisan they, because again, it just depends on who the person is that's putting the candidate forward. Because, again, if it's the Democrats running a smear campaign now, it's the Republicans that do it next time. And again, if you want that to be in the middle of your healthcare choices, then the single payer is the way to go. But if you want, independence, freedom of choice, freedom of choosing your doctors without that nonsense in the middle of your healthcare decisions, then you need to be supporting the kind of initiatives that we're fighting for.
Absolutely. I mean, you and I learned this together. Well, you quicker than I did, but we learned a long time ago through this process. We both started off when Obamacare was getting litigated, thinking that we knew who the good guys were and who the bad guys were, and it turns out that we were both wrong. It turns out they're all bad guys. It was a trick question, and so, yeah, there's no question about it. This is both a Democrat and Republican problem. And, after a dozen trips to D.C., I finally had to realize that. Well, I think I was probably the last one to figure it out. But, I think we all understand that, at the moment, one shoe is on the Democrats' foot and the other's on the Republican foot. But as you aptly pointed out, that can switch over one election.
Right.
So, in any case, it's just disappointing that we're in this position. I was hoping to be talking to you next week about how the testimony went and what you learned and who you talked to, and I was looking forward to pulling sound bites of your testimony and playing them and saying, well, what'd you think here? Who I reacted to a certain way there? But hopefully we'll get that opportunity sometime in the future. I wish I was optimistic about what that was going to be. So, Lee, we're coming up on the end of this segment. We've got some other things to talk about that you and I talked about. So I'm hoping you'll stick around and we can do another 13 minutes. You're listening to the Doctor's Lounge on America's Web Radio. Stay with us.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Welcome back to the Doctor's Lounge. Karuchak, your host this week, with special guest Dr. Lee Gross, the president of the Docs for Patient Care Foundation. So last segment was all about sort of depressing stuff. You were supposed to have been in Washington by now and were supposed to have already testified by now in front of Congress to talk about direct primary care and ways to save money. Instead, we spent the last segment talking about why that didn't happen. But let's talk about some brighter stuff, because you have made some successful trips to Washington, to the White House, and met with some people and learned some things and taught them some things. So why don't you share that with us and make us all feel a little bit better?
Yeah, so good chatting with you again. So, last week I actually had my fourth visit to the White House in this current administration. And this one was a little bit different. So the first three visits to the White House basically were at my sort of begging, pleading, asking, pulling strings and seeing however I could possibly get to have these meetings. This was the first time that actually the invitation came directly from the White House without any prior prodding on my part. They reached out to us and said, hey, we're holding a meeting. We'd like you to come to Washington. We'd like to attend, and we'd like your feedback on things. So that was actually, I think, a big moment for our organization to actually have, again, the executive branch reaching out to us and saying, we think it's worthy to have your opinion on this matter. So as you probably are aware, back in last October, the president issued an executive order on healthcare, and it was basically sort of the choice and competition executive order. He was looking for ways to jiggle the healthcare system in any way he could, without having to involve the legislature and changing laws, since clearly at that point Obamacare was not going to be repealed. And he said, what can we do without passing legislation? And so he issued a few directives. One was the association health plan rules, allowing the expansion of association health plans, which you and I have talked about before. The short-term limited duration insurance expansion, which we've also talked about, expanding the access to short-term medical plans, which are basically just low-cost, very affordable major medical plans. The association health plan basically allows people in a similar industry that may be small businesses to pool together and act as a large business to buy group health plans, even groups across state lines. So it just increases buying power to increase affordability and access to health care. The two other parts of that executive order that still have not happened yet is there was an expectation of a release of the HRA rules, which are the health reimbursement accounts, which allow an employer to make a contribution to an employee's health care purchases. And that would be tax-free for the employer and tax-free for the employee, so it's technically not counted as wages to the employee, sort of a win-win on both sides of that equation. So that new rule on HRAs is expected to be announced or released any time now, any day of the week. The cake is almost baked, and they're ready to start decorating that. And the other thing that came out of that executive order was they were tasked with the Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Labor, the Department of Treasury, and the Federal Trade Commission were all told to analyze everything they can in the healthcare system and find out what changes they can make to improve competition and choice. And so they created this choice and competition report, which is not a public document yet. But again, that is sort of in the final stages. And so what they did was invite key stakeholders in healthcare policy to the White House to sort of preview the report, kind of question what's in it, and sort of guide the final stages of that report. And that was where our invitation came from. So we kind of got a sense of where the White House is going with this, and we're able to sort of help them sort of put the finishing touches on it, sort of give them some cautions as to where they might make some mistakes, and it was a very interesting process. So we appreciated hearing from all the organizations that I mentioned. They were all represented and had spoke about the process. So I got to put in some plugs about the direct primary care and making sure that the direct primary care interests were represented in those reports. And I think people, when they do actually see the HRA rule, I think that they're going to get it mostly right. And the good news is there's going to be a comment period that they're going to be able to see where they got it wrong and hopefully fix the areas where they got wrong and make them right. And I think when they actually see this choice and competition report, they're going to love it. They're going to love everything in there, because I just don't think they left many stones unturned. From what I'm hearing and what they described, I mean, they really have addressed every major issue and even minor issue that might improve choice and competition. But again, this is just sort of an inventory of what is wrong with the system. It's not an action plan. It's not actionable as it stands. It's going to require legislation. It's going to require more executive action. It's going to require new rule writing and regulations. So if Republicans do lose, the House or do lose control of the Senate, then essentially you could say take that document and shred it.
Yeah.
But if you like what's coming out in that document, then I think that makes this election even more important. Again, we're not sort of advocating for one party over another. I'm just saying if you like what's in that document, then that's probably something you want to support going forward.
So, who exactly creates the document, and who is the intended audience?
Well, I think the intended audience is the American public.
Okay, all right. I wasn't sure if this was supposed to go to policymakers in particular, or that there were particular entities who would formally receive this and comment on it, or whether it just goes out with a press release and whoever wants to grab onto it can comment. I'm a little naive on this. I suspect the listeners are too. So I was just asking dumb questions.
Yeah. So I think the report itself is actually just an internal inventory for the executive branch to see where they see the problems. I guess you could sort of see it as a blueprint or a roadmap to, where they want to go or what issues they want to tackle. But it'll be a public document that anybody can see and review.
Okay, well, you and I can probably talk about it on the air when it comes out, and that'll be some grist for the mill, I suppose. It sounds like something that's very interesting and coming out, I guess, very soon, like you said. They're just decorating the icing on the cake, I guess.
Yeah, that's the sense I got, that this was going to be an imminent release. So, but it was nice to again be able to sort of guide that, particularly as to how it impacts the direct primary care aspect of it. I really wanted to put in the plug as far as the HRAs go, just because there are a lot of employers out there that want to use HRAs to pay for direct primary care memberships, and so we want to make sure that rule doesn't necessarily hamper their ability to do that, and actually expands their ability to work with DPC practices. So
I guess that whole thing is in front of the Senate, right? Is that still, to sort of switch topics slightly, but we talked about last time where that bill was going, and I guess it's still, because the House passed it, or... Yeah,
so there's a difference between the HRA and the HSA.
Yes.
The HRA, Health Reimbursement Account, HSA, Health Savings Account. HSA is a bill that was passed by the House and is sitting in the Senate waiting for anything to happen. I think general consensus is nothing's probably going to happen on that bill before the midterms. But if it does start moving, it still obviously needs lots of work based upon our previous conversations.
Gotcha.
There's still areas that we're trying to work with lawmakers to try to teach them how to make that a better bill. So we'll keep reaching out to them. And
well, we got about 3 minutes and 15 seconds left in the segment, so let's pivot and talk about the upcoming Docs for Patient Care Foundation's Direct Primary Care meeting, because that's coming up in, 6 weeks, I guess? Something like that?
Yeah.
So how's it going?
November 1st to 3rd in Orlando at the Rosen Center Hotel. This is going to be a record attendance for us. We're looking at probably at least 350 attendees at this conference. We are expanding the reach of this program, so we're actually having a series of lectures specifically geared towards specialty care. We have a lot of specialists that are trying to embrace the movement, and I constantly get a question, well, how can specialists get involved in this? Well, a lot of what the direct primary care and the DPC docs do is applicable to specialists, but some stuff is not. So we wanted to definitely reach out, expand that umbrella even further and let more people come in under the umbrella. So I think you'll enjoy those talks specifically geared towards specialists. Again, we have the tracks in the program for the people that are newbies at this, or curious, and then we also have tracks for people that have been in this for some time. There's plenty of room for lots of people to learn more, even if you've been doing this as long as I've been doing it. We have fantastic national speakers, so we're going to have a day of just very exciting speakers that you'll really, really want to come and hear. So if you don't have your tickets, go to the Docs for Patient Care Foundation website, D4PCFoundation.org, and look for the Direct Primary Care CME. We're going to be offering CME for this conference. The free tickets are gone, so the tickets that are left are non-scholarship tickets. They are full